On this lesson, we're gonna learn some functions. In order to do that, though, we have to introduce a little bit of basic math, nothing complicated. Don't get intimidated, please. However, before we do that, I wanna thank you guys so much because we already have 100 subscribers, and I know you're probably thinking, okay, this is not a reason to celebrate because other people have 1 million subscribers. But if you get to understand that I've built most of these tutorials having 24 subscribers, seeing 100 subscribers here, it's crazy for me. For instance, this specific video, that's the introduction of HTML and CSS, it has all these crazy comments, and it's very exciting for me to see that you guys wanna send messages. Some of you found me on Instagram and we exchanged a couple of messages, and I got to learn a little bit about your story and your programming journey, and this is actually amazing and really touching to me that I get to know a little bit of you. I just wanna thank you so much for showing all this interest. My channel is fairly new. I only have 6 videos uploaded, and I consider this a huge success when I see these numbers here and I see all these comments. And I would like to thank you all for subscribing, and if you haven't already, please do, because it's giving me so much strength to move forward and be more excited and do more of these videos. So thank you guys. I can't say this enough. I know it sounds catchy or whatever, but it's super inspiring to me to read all your messages. I will always do my best to answer each one of you, and I can't thank you enough. So yeah. Okay, enough with my emotional outbreak. Let's go back to the lesson. So let's clear all this. We're gonna try to understand a little bit the logic of the variables, because there are some fundamental differences from classic math to writing math in JavaScript or in any programming language in general. If we say let x equals 3 and then console.log, let me actually zoom in here because I know if you watch from a mobile it's impossible to read these letters. So we get the answer 3 here, x is 3. However, if I set x equals 5 later on along the code, and if I console log now, we see that x used to be 3, now x is 5. Something very peculiar is if I write x equals x plus 1. As the system is reading, it goes to first line, x equals 3, then it redefines x, so x becomes 5, and then we say x equals x 5 plus 1, 6. However, I hope you get the idea how the program is reading and how we communicate to the program a couple of things. So this line right here, in traditional mathematics, it doesn't make sense. The basic difference is that the x right here, it's not the traditional x from mathematics. It's only a variable, so it's only a box that contains an information. So now we'll try a very classic programming problem using JavaScript that will help us a lot to understand the logic of how JavaScript works and how variables work. Let's say we have 2 numbers, let x equals 3 as we set up there, and let y equals 5. And we'll console log x, and if you press Alt Shift and down here, you can copy the line, and we can also console log y. So by saving, we see the first line x is 3, the second line y is 5. And just to be sure, we can write a string here, x is space, and we'll close the double brackets, and then we go down there and we say y is space, and we'll close the double brackets there, and we'll press here just a plus as we saw in the previous lesson. What we want to do here is we want to switch these numbers around and give what is inside the x, give it to y, and what is inside the y, give it to x, but we want to do it in a dynamic way. We don't want to just reassign them. The first idea we have is x equals 5 and y equals 3. No. This is not an acceptable solution because we just said earlier we don't want to reassign them. We want to do it in a dynamic way. So the meaning of this exercise is to make us think outside of the box. So I want you to pause the video and think about it a little bit, and then when you're ready, just unpause and we'll talk about the solution. So my main problem here is that if I say x equals y and y equals x and save. I have this problem here that both of them are 5 because right here x became 5, and when I say y equals x, it's still 5, so both of them are 5. So that's the main problem we have to escape. So let's say that x is a red bucket full of sand and y is a blue bucket full of rocks, and you just want to exchange what they have inside. So we want the sand to go in the blue bucket and we want the rocks to go in the red bucket. What you would do in real life is you would take another bucket, empty one this time. So we can say let z. And right now what we did here is we created a third bucket that's actually empty. Exactly as we would do in real life. And what we do is we said that z equals x. So we fill the empty bucket with sand. Then we can easily take x and put inside rocks, so x equal y. So now we are finally free to have access to some sand, let's say, because we use the x to back it up, and we can finally say y equals z. So we finally managed to get the result we wanted in a dynamic way. So this problem might look like nonsense right now, but now that you solved it once, you just created in your brain a new tool, and this tool you can use it later on in real life examples. Because the x right here, if I press F2, I can replace it with red bucket. The 3, I can replace it with a string sand. The y, if we press F2, we can replace it with blue bucket. And the 5, we can replace it with a string rocks. And of course the z with F2, I forgot about it, we can replace it with empty bucket. And here of course in the string, let's put instead of y and x these names. So now we started with red bucket having sand, and we end up with red bucket having rocks. So hopefully this makes sense to you. However, if you're struggling a little bit, don't worry about that at the moment, because as we go forward and we use a lot of more variables and a lot of different knowledge, if you come back to this lesson later on, you're gonna see how easier it is to understand everything we did right here. So let's see how the functions work. We'll have an x, let x equals 6, then we'll go function space, we'll give this function a name, let's name it division. Right next to it we put open and closing parentheses, and then we open brackets. So whatever we write inside the brackets is going to be the calculations of this function. So here we can say let calculation equals x divided by 3, and then we can go on and console.log this calculation right here. So if we save this right now, we don't see anything down there. Why this happens is actually because, like we say here, let x equals 6, we just defined x and we gave it a value. Yeah, right here we just defined a function, but we never actually called it to run. This is why we'll go down there and we say division, open closing parentheses, and this is how we call the function to actually start running. Let's save now, and here we see the result 2. So inside this function we got the x, that is 6, divided by 3, and then we console logged it to see it up there. However, if I turn the x to 4 and save now, we see that the result we have is 1.33333, and we have all these decimals after the dot. And a lot of times in real life programming, we just want to focus on the actual number and not get distracted by all these crazy decimals. So what we can use is something called Math.round. And inside we can put some number. If I put 1.4, let's console log it to see what it's gonna give us. We go console.log, we open parentheses, and I'm gonna cut this, Control X, and I'm gonna paste it in here. And now we press save, and we see that Math.round of 1.4 is 1. If I try in here now 1.6, so Math.round is gonna round it up this time, and it's gonna give us the number 2. I want you to notice how we write the math with a capital M here, because JavaScript is case sensitive, which means if I write it with all small letters and I press save, I'm gonna get an error there. It doesn't understand math like that. math has to be exactly written as I wrote it here, and all the syntax has to be exactly the same, or we're gonna get some errors and we're gonna break our code. And this is actually the reason why on the previous lesson I told you when we wrote let first name or let birth year that we used camel notation, because this way we avoid confusions from the special tools that are embedded and built in JavaScript to be confused with the variables we build. So right now I want you to pause the video and try to apply the Math.round inside our calculation right here. Pause the video and come back for the solution. So what we actually have to do is we go in here that we say let calculation equals. After the equal, we go Math.round and we open parentheses. We keep inside the x divided by 3 and we close the parentheses between the 3 and the semicolon. Yeah, we can delete this one now and press save. So the 1.3 became 1. I want you to try another 2 of them. This is the Math.round. We have Math.floor, that this one, even if you had inside 1.9, it's gonna turn it down to 1. And we have also Math.ceiling. It's Math.ceil. And we press save. And this one, it's gonna round up. The 1.3 became 2 instead of 1. These are all some tools that we're gonna use towards the end of the lesson. So you're gonna wanna have to keep them in mind that they exist. That's all I want you to do for now. So let's try to build a different function. Now we'll delve a little bit into geometry because I am Greek and we like these things. So let's say we have one line that is 3 centimeters long. If we take this line and create a square in 2 dimensions, we're gonna have a square that the volume inside the square is 3 multiplied by 3. And of course, if we take this square and we move it on a 3D space and we create a cube, the volume of this cube is going to be 3 in the power of 3, which is equals to 3 multiplied by 3 multiplied by 3. Yeah. So I want us to create a function that we give it the length of the side in centimeters, and we can name a variable named a, and this function is going to return to us in the console the volume of the square and the volume of the cube. So it's time to delete these ones, and we'll say let a equals, let's start with 3 on this example, and then we'll go function, we can name it volumes, open and closing parentheses, and we open brackets, and inside we're gonna say let square volume equals a multiplied by a, and let cube volume equals, now we have 3 different ways to write that. The easiest of course is to be like a multiplied by a multiplied by a 3 times. Another way to write it, if you are interested, is like that, and the third way is math.po, and in here we give 2 values. The first one is a and the second one is the power. So this one means a in the power of 3, but because we are just beginners, this one is enough. I just show you the other ones just to get an idea of how you can phrase things. If you have something more complicated like a in the power of 10, you wouldn't write 10 times a multiplied by a multiplied by a. You would come here and you would say a in the power of 10, and this would be the proper way to do it. However, I'm gonna delete these 2, we don't need them. After that, we want to display the results in the console, and I want you to go on and console log this phrase, the square volume is, and the result, and the cube volume is, and the result. I want you to pause the video right now and try it and come back for the solution. So we'll go console.log, open parentheses, and because we're gonna start writing a string, we put double quotes, the volume of the square is space, we'll go outside the parentheses, plus square volume dynamically, plus we open a string again, space, and the cube volume is space, and we add dynamically cube volume. And if you want to be the cool kid in the class, you can also add 1 dot here as a string. Of course, if we save this one now, the function is not gonna run because we didn't call it, we just defined it. So we'll go down there and we'll just run this function, save, and we'll get the result. The volume of the square is 9 and the cube volume is 27. So if I change the 3 in here with 5, and let's save. Now we get the different numbers. So this is a beginner friendly way to use the function, but if you actually noticed all this time we never used anything inside this parenthesis. And how we can use it actually is that here we define the a, let a equals 5, and then we called an empty function. What can we do in here? It's that you can define your variable in here, right in here. So if I say function volume a and delete that line up there, automatically JavaScript will create a function box named volumes. And because we pressed a in here, it will also define a parameter that's actually exactly like a var that we had up there. And this time when you call the function, you just put the value of this parameter a. So we call volumes with a value of 3. And now I press save. And as you see in here, automatically it defined the a and it gave it a value of 3. So this way we don't have to write extra lines up there. And of course you can play around, you can put different price here, I can put 8 and save, and we see that it works properly. And we have less code. Before with a var up there we used around 10 lines of code, now we used 8. So now you have a last exercise for this lesson. You're going to create your own function. However, because we are not familiar with the syntax yet, you're absolutely free to keep this function up there and start building the new one down here. I want to build a function that we give it meters and it's turning the meters into feet. So let's try to Google it because of course we don't know the mathematical formula for this. And we see here that we actually have to multiply the feet by this number right here. Let's copy that. Right click and copy. So I want you to have a variable that's called meters. Let's say we give it a value of 100, and by running this new function we want it to console log, for instance, 100 meters is equal to blah blah blah, this number of feet. Pause the video and come back for the solution. So how we start? The easy way, we go let meters equals, and let's put the number 100 for now, and then we go on and define a function, and we go function, let's name it meters to feet calculator, open closing parentheses, and we put the brackets. And I want you at this moment to write me on the comments below how you named your function, what name you gave to your function. This is a very long name. We could do just calculator, but because we calculate stuff up there as well, I don't want anybody to be confused, and I'm going extreme. So at this point, I want you to write me in the comments below how you named your function, what name you gave here, because as we said in the previous lesson, it's super important to spend some time on naming your variables and your functions and everything. So I go right here now and I say let feet equals meters multiplied by this number we found earlier, and then underneath I will just console.log meters, the variable meters plus space meters, because this is like we say 100, so we say 100 space meters, comma is space, go outside, plus feet, the variable feet plus space feet. Are you happy now? Because of course our function is very grumpy today. We put a semicolon here, we can put a semicolon there, and if I press save now, my new function is not running because I defined it but I didn't call it to run. So we go on and just call it, and now we see the first function up there that we can actually delete. We don't need it anymore now, and we see that it says here 100 meters. I didn't have to put this comma there, and we see now that we say 100 meters is blah 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 feet. Are you happy now? So one thing I don't like here is that we have the 0.1. I want to be a round number, and earlier we'll learn how to use Math.round, and this is what I'm gonna do here. I will go inside the let Math.round, and I will put inside the parentheses this multiplication, and that should do the trick. Let's press save now, and boom, we have normal numbers without decimals. And even if I go here and I press 50, it's gonna give me the result I need. Let's Google a little bit to be sure. 50 meters to feet, and we see that we are correct. Whatever you do, always try to double check the results. The last thing we can do to take advantage of the function syntax, and actually delete this line by writing meters here and putting the number of the meters down there. We no longer need this line at all, and now we can run our function and give our values directly in here. I can put whatever number I want and press save, and I get the result over there. So that was the lesson with functions. Of course, we're gonna be working with functions a lot, and on the next lesson we're gonna use if as well, and we're gonna use it inside a function. So don't worry about the syntax and all these things, because we're gonna use them again and again and again as we introduce new concepts. So for one last time, I want to thank each and every one of you that pressed subscribe. I get very excited about these things. Thanks for the comments. Thanks for the likes. As promised, I'll see you next week, and keep it up, guys.